Three mistakes are happening at the same time for most intermediate lifters. And that combination is why your evidence-based bulking and muscle hypertrophy keeps stalling. You're miscalibrating your calories in one direction or the other. Your training intensity sits well below where you think it does, and your psychology actively fights your physiology. Every one of these has a fix backed by peer-reviewed evidence, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to change for science-based muscle building. We're starting with food. A 2023 study published in Sports Medicine Open should have rewritten the playbook on bulking for natural lifters. Eric Helms and his research team assigned resistance-trained individuals to one of three groups: maintenance calories, a 5% surplus, or a 15% surplus, then tracked them for 8 weeks. The larger surplus failed to produce meaningfully greater muscle thickness, and what it did produce was a lot more body fat. Skin fold thickness climbed in direct proportion to body mass gained, with an R-squared of 0.49, but the link between weight gain and actual bicep muscle thickness turned out weak. Helms' own summary of those results was blunt. Faster rates of body mass gain primarily serve to increase the rate that fat mass accumulates, rather than increasing rates of hypertrophy or strength gain. And the math behind this becomes obvious once you see it laid out. Greg Nuckols over at Stronger by Science calculated the metabolic cost of building muscle for an intermediate lifter gaining 2 to 4 pounds per year, and the number landed between 10 and 27 calories per day. That's the actual energy your body needs to fuel muscle protein synthesis through the mTOR pathway. When you're shoveling down 500 or 800 or 1,000 extra calories above maintenance, the machinery for building muscle is already saturated, which means those extra calories get routed straight to fat storage. What makes this worse for intermediates is that your window for rapid gains closed a while ago. Lyle McDonald's model estimates 20 to 25 pounds of muscle in year 1, 10 to 12 in year 2, 5 to 6 in year 3, and just 2 to 3 pounds annually after that. Alan Aragon's numbers tell the same story from a different angle, with intermediates gaining roughly 0.5% to 1% of their body weight in muscle per month. A 170-pound lifter maxes out at about 2 pounds of lean tissue monthly under near-perfect conditions. Aragon framed it well on social media when he wrote, "If gaining 1 to 2 pounds of muscle per month sounds painfully slow to you, ask yourself how many adults you know that have gained 24 to 48 pounds of muscle in the past 1 to 2 years. That reality dictates the surplus you actually need. Current evidence points to 200 to 300 calories above maintenance per day, somewhere in the range of 5 to 15% over your total daily energy expenditure, which works out to gaining roughly 1/4 to 0.5% of your body weight per week. For our 170-pound lifter, the scale should move about 0.5 pound weekly." Israel landed on the same target from his own coaching experience. Aim for about 0.5 pound per week when bulking. 0.5 pound per week sounds agonizingly slow until you realize that anything faster mostly adds fat, not muscle. An equal and opposite error trips up just as many people, and it might actually be the more common trap among intermediate lifters: the perma-cut, that six-pack year-round identity where any hint of softness in the mirror triggers an immediate calorie pullback, and growth never gets a chance to happen. Helms has coached both failure modes and described the pattern clearly. "I'm either finding myself convincing the permanent bulkers to take a little more control and patience, or I'm convincing the six-pack abs year-round crew that maybe they need to have more realistic and individualized expectations for themselves." Sustained caloric deficits suppress baseline muscle protein synthesis in as few as 3 days, which means every time you panic and slash calories after a bloated morning weigh-in, you're resetting the anabolic clock. Your body never stays in the growth environment long enough to actually build anything. What Helms recommends instead is tracking 14-day body weight averages rather than reacting to daily or even weekly fluctuations, because that's the time frame where real trends separate themselves from water weight noise. The protein question has a cleaner answer than most people expect. Morton's 2018 meta-analysis pulled together 49 studies and over 1,800 participants, and protein supplementation beyond 1.6 grams per kilogram per day produced no additional fat-free mass gains from resistance training. Their confidence interval topped out at 2.2 grams per kilogram, and Stuart Phillips from McMaster University, along with Schoenfeld and Aragon, recommend spreading that total across a minimum of 4 meals at 0.4 to 0.55 grams per kilogram each. In plain terms, roughly 1 gram per pound of body weight per day across 3 to 5 meals covers it for most lifters. Distribution across the day carries real weight behind it too. Mamoreau's 2014 study in the Journal of Nutrition showed that even protein distribution across meals produced about 25% higher 24-hour muscle protein synthesis compared to the standard American habit of cramming most protein into dinner. One finding worth adding to your mental model came from Trumlin's 2023 study in Cell Reports Medicine. 100 grams of protein consumed after exercise triggered a greater and more prolonged anabolic response, lasting over 12 hours, compared to just 25 grams. That old idea about a 30-gram ceiling per meal is looking outdated, particularly when slower digesting proteins like casein are involved. For timing, whey protein offers rapid leucine delivery post-workout, while casein provides sustained amino acid release. On supplements, creatine monohydrate remains the most evidence-backed ergogenic aid for hypertrophy, with 3 to 5 grams daily supporting both training performance and muscle protein synthesis. Calories and protein can be dialed in perfectly and still produce nothing if the training stimulus falls short, which brings us to the part that stings a little. Jeff Nippard flagged a finding that should give every intermediate lifter pause. When trainees tested their actual rep max at a load they described as a 10-rep weight, about 47% of them cranked out 16 to 20 plus reps in practice. They were sitting 6 to 10 reps away from failure on every set, which makes those sets junk volume, the kind that piles up fatigue without ever triggering a growth signal. Robinson and colleagues confirmed the mechanism behind this in 2024, showing a clear dose-response relationship between proximity to failure and hypertrophy. Working sets need to land within 0 to 3 reps in reserve, or an RPE of 7 to 10 to count as stimulative. On total volume, the Schoenfeld, Ogborn, and Krieger meta-analysis from 2017 documented a graded dose response where each additional weekly set correlated with about 0.37% more hypertrophy. The largest dataset on the question came from Pellin's meta-regression, spanning 2024 and 2025, covering 67 studies and over 2,000 participants. Growth required a minimum of 4 sets per week per muscle group. 5 to 10 sets showed strong optimization, and gains kept climbing with diminishing returns beyond that threshold. Where the field's top researchers converge is 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, trained across 2 to 3 sessions. Isregtal's volume landmarks framework maps this into a practical structure. You open a training block near your minimum effective volume, somewhere around 10 to 12 sets, then ramp up each week toward your maximum recoverable volume over 4 to 6 weeks before dropping back down to about 6 sets for a deload. Week 1 starts at 12, week 2 hits 14, 3 goes to 16, 4 to 18, 5 reaches 20, and week 6 resets everything. Progressive overload doesn't require heavier weight on the bar every session either. Plotkin, Coleman, and Schoenfeld compared load progression against repetition progression over 8 weeks in 2022, and both methods produced similar hypertrophy in the range of 6.7 to 12.9%. Double progression works just fine, meaning you push reps higher within a target range and only add weight once you hit the ceiling. Most bulking conversations cover food and training, then completely skip the input that connects them both. Sleep doesn't just support recovery, it directly governs muscle protein synthesis. Le Mans' 2021 study in Physiological Reports measured what a single night of zero sleep does to trained adults, and the damage was immediate. Muscle protein synthesis dropped by 18%, cortisol climbed 21%, and testosterone fell 24%. One night without sleep produced all of that. Extending the window made things worse. Saner's 2020 research tracked 5 consecutive nights at only 4 hours of sleep, and found that myofibrillar protein synthesis, the specific process that builds the contractile machinery inside your muscle fibers, was significantly suppressed across the board. The Nedlacheva study from 2010, published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, painted the most alarming picture. 2 groups lost the same total amount of weight during caloric restriction, but the group sleeping 5.5 hours per night lost 55% less fat and 60% more lean mass compared to those who slept 8.5 hours. Same scale number, completely different bodies. Nucking summarized this as well as anyone. You can't out-train bad sleep. Regardless of your program or diet, everything you do will be more effective if you sleep more. Chronic cortisol elevation from life stress or overtraining compounds the problem further. A 2022 Mendelian randomization study linked higher cortisol levels causally to reduced grip strength and reduced lean mass. Your surplus can be calibrated perfectly. Your program can follow every evidence-based principle in the book, and sustained stress will still redirect those calories toward fat tissue instead of muscle. Deloading falls into this category as well. Expert consensus places deloads every 4 to 8 weeks, and a 2024 survey of competitive athletes found they averaged one every 5.6 weeks, lasting about 6.4 days. Scheduling planned recovery isn't a sign of weakness. Skipping it is a sign of poor programming. Everything we've covered so far deals with inputs you can measure, calories, sets, hours of sleep, but the factor that actually derails most bulk's lives between your ears. Muscle dysmorphia affects roughly 2% of the general population, but prevalence among male weightlifters ranges from 13.6% all the way up to 54% in competitive bodybuilders. People living with the condition spend over 3 hours every day fixated on thoughts about muscularity, and 87.5% of those diagnosed are male between the ages of 15 and 32. Social media pours gasoline on this fire. A 2024 study out of Brunel University, London, found that passive scrolling through fitness content correlated with a stronger drive for muscularity and lower body satisfaction among physically active men. A separate 2024 study documented an even more insidious effect, showing that exposure to increasingly muscular images recalibrated men's perception of what muscular even means, making moderately built physiques register as small. Then there's the chemical elephant in the room. Global anabolic steroid use sits at about 6.4% among males overall, but among regular gym goers that figure jumps to 15 to 30% and reaches as high as 43% in recreational bodybuilders. When a large share of the physiques flooding your feed are pharmacologically enhanced, natural progress starts feeling like personal failure rather than a biological ceiling. Israel addressed this head-on. Even if a video correctly identifies a natural athlete, that person is likely a genetic elite, using the absolute best natural physiques in the world as a benchmark for your own potential is like a high school freshman planning their NFL career. Lane Norton's coaching experience captured the time problem at the center of all this. Fat loss requires patience, but muscle gain requires way more patience, since you can't see the outcomes as quickly. His recommendation is a minimum 12-week commitment to lean gaining before you reassess anything. Helms offered the most grounding perspective of all for advanced natural lifters. The last time I was able to look in the mirror as a drug-free lifter and assess whether or not I was bigger was the first year of my training. After year 1, progress keeps happening. You just can't see it in the mirror anymore. The evidence-based prescription for an intermediate natural lifter boils down to a handful of clear targets. On nutrition, 200 to 300 calories above maintenance, protein at 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day, spread across 3 to 5 meals, gaining 1/4 to 0.5% of your body weight each week, starting your bulk around 10 to 15% body fat, and winding it down if you drift above roughly 20%, keeps the whole cycle productive. For training, 10 to 20 hard sets per muscle group per week, each taken within 0 to 3 reps of failure or RPE 7 to 10, across 2 to 3 weekly sessions. Compound movements form the foundation. Progressive overload follows a periodized structure, and deloads land every 4 to 8 weeks. Sessions stay under 90 minutes. Recovery means 7 to 9 hours of sleep and active stress management. Skip the ice bath right after hypertrophy work. Commit to 16 to 24 weeks minimum and track progress through 14-day body weight averages rather than the daily scale. Bulking stalls when lifters fight the process on 3 fronts at once: a surplus that's too big or too small, training that feels hard but isn't close enough to failure, and a mindset warped by comparisons that were never fair to begin with. Correct all 3, and the system delivers. Growth just moves at a pace your brain doesn't want to accept, and accepting that pace is the actual skill nobody talks about. If you've been lifting for months and your arms still look the same, stop what you're doing. You don't have a genetics problem, you have a strategy problem. Most skinny guys train random, eat random, and wonder why nothing changes. Clean bulking with the right structure changes everything. You gain size that actually stays, without looking soft. If what I share for free already got you results, that's just the surface. The full program is what actually transforms your physique week by week. I'm only keeping enrollment open for a few more days. Click the link below before it closes. Get the full program and finally stop guessing. A year from now, your reflection is either going to thank you or remind you that you waited too long. Click the link. See you on the other side. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.